Wasn't about the different thing, they didn't respond when I asked them, so.
Tony, that's you, you're up.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're gonna have to go through a slightly different order, but that really doesn't.
This is tax collection.
That doesn't make a big difference. Introduce yourself, if you would, please, so.
My name is Tony Lynn McGowan, I'm the tax collector.
Hi, Tony.
How do you spell your last name? MC, capital G-O-W-A-N.
The floor is yours, ma'am.
So, looking at the budget that the town administrator submitted, the first two line items are salary items. My salary, I'm a part-time collector, I work 25 hours, and the staff salaries are for a full-time clerk and a half-time clerk that we share with the assessor's office. The longevity is for the two clerks. Again, it's for a full-time clerk and a half-time longevity.
What page are you on?
It's on page 10. The telephone is, we have one phone line and a fax line, so two lines that come into the office. I had originally budgeted $700, which was based on last year's average monthly times 12, but it was brought to my attention that the phone bill has gone up, so that's why it was increased to the $800 by the town administrator to cover the actual expense of the two phone lines. The supplies and miscellaneous, that covers the mailing and the production of the tax bill. So the bulk of that money, approximately $6,500 of it, is the cost that it takes to print and produce the tax bills. The remaining portion is what we use for daily operations, paper, envelopes. The biggest thing is ink cartridges. They're expensive, and we go through a lot of them with the amount of things that we print in the office. The collection service line item is at $6,000. That used to be $10,000, and it was cut to $6,000. And
Is that consulting?
the consulting is actually, it's a collection. It's the collection agency that we use, Rossi Collections, that we turn all our delinquent accounts over to. It's labeled consulting services, but it's the collection fees that the collection agency charges.
Can I just ask you a question? Last year, they transferred that whole amount, that $6,000 to streetlights, so they obviously didn't need a penny of it, so I'm just wondering.
Well, it was at $10,000. So
Here it says $6,000 on the line.
So
2014, 2015, it says $6,000 on our sheet.
we definitely used, let me see what the end, 2013 year end was for collection services. $3,677.88 is what we used in the 13-14 budget. So $6,000 must have been the remaining balance that was transferred because it used to be at a $10,000.
We couldn't do carryovers.
We didn't carry anything over.
So you're saying if okay, anyway, I'm just wondering, the whole amount was transferred out to streetlights, so I'm questioning, couldn't we win $6,000 when?
Well, this year to date, we've used $4,072 of that $6,000. So it looks like a more consistent amount that we're using is between, say, $4,000 and maybe this year $5,000, which is why it was cut. But,
How much did we use this year, I'm sorry?
$4,072 has been paid in collection fees. It's a very difficult number to budget because I turn over accounts on a regular basis, and whether or not they're collected on determines whether or not the collection agency has success or not. So this year they've been slightly more successful already to date than they were last year. Just last week I turned over 207 accounts. Now, if they're all able to be collected on, the collection fee will go up. Usually, they don't collect on all of them right away, it's a timely process. So some of those 207 accounts may be collected on out of next budget.
Maybe we can go down to 5,000?
Let's be careful about nickel diming something this early in the...
Well, I think this year we're gonna have to cut places because the library bond and such, and I'm just thinking of, a little bit here, a little bit there, adds up to, because to me, if they transfer it, then,
It definitely, was, $10,000 was probably over budgeting. $6,000 is probably going to be pretty close this year. And again, it's a guessing game as to how much they will collect.
You have to be careful with transfers, because you don't know just looking at a transfer. If the transfer was done because some other department needed the money and the town administrator or whoever it is made a decision to move one, or was it legitimately a surplus in that particular account?
well, Mr. Gonzo had a practice of padding.
Mr. Gonzo is not here.
I'm keeping track of it, that's all.
Well, you can keep track of it, but I'm telling you, there are various reasons for having money left over and money being transferred. So,
But it's always good to find out what the reason is.
fine. But trying to nickel dime it right now, I don't think is the way to go.
John, last year we actually did an actual of what we spent throughout the years, and we actually did an average. And that to us was very reasonable. I understand what Mr. Gonzo used to do, but that certainly is not the practice at this point.
I didn't think so.
And you did transfer it all to streamlines, that's all.
Right, and Madeline, we may have to transfer back into her account from another account that isn't spending. But at that point, that's where we have the money, and if she needs more money, we transfer it back. But we actually did an average, and we actually did actuals, and so her number was pretty good.
Okay, thanks, Denise.
The second to last on this is software maintenance. That is the annual maintenance contract for our software program, which does all of our collections. Last year it was the $3,625, so it goes up on average 2.5% to 3%, so that is a 3% increase on what we paid this year. And the postage is, again, the majority of that postage, almost $6,000 of it is the mailing of the tax bills. The remaining of it is office operations. This particular month, we'll be doing almost $1,500 in delinquent notices for motor vehicles. So if you put a stamp on every one of those, that's almost $800 in stamps just on the motor vehicle delinquent notices alone. So
How many do you have?
we have almost 1,500 motor vehicle delinquent notices going out this month.
Told you something.
So that's where,
So Tori, the postage category, under consulting services, which, I'm sorry, supplies and miscellaneous, including the mailing and production of tax bills.
the supplies
So
and
what's the postage?
miscellaneous,
How does that
that's the
differ?
mail, that's the actual putting the bill in the mail. That's the cost of mailing.
postage.
Exactly.
And so the supplies and,
It's the printing of the bill, the paper, the envelope that it goes in.
okay.
And that concludes the operational and salary portion of my budget. The last budget that, item that I look over is the tax sale line item, which is been level funded at $3,000 every year. That covers all of the expense of the properties that we tax sale that don't actually sell at tax sale. Each property incurs advertising fees, title search, multiple mailing fees for notices. If the property doesn't sell at tax sale, the town has to pay the cost of tax selling those properties. And this year, the tax sale that we had in November, we used $2,991 of that $3,000 to cover our tax sale charges. So that line item was pretty close. We tax sailed, we started out about 150 properties that tax sailed, and I believe the final day of the sale was about 12, and the town had about, I'm guessing, but I think 6 or 8 went in the town's name as tax sale.
I have a question. Longevity pay, I just had a question on that, just to get an understanding. In the case case of 2 employees have reached the top step, which generate the maximum of 6% of base salary, being added to compensation for longevity. Is this every year? Is this they get 6% because they've hit their top step? They get 6% on their base pay every year?
Yes.
Yes.
So then, if we do a contract and they get you try to raise it to another step because they've hit their step, they would then get 2 raises if it's a 3-year contract, they would get 2 raises every year. They'd get the 6% longevity and 2%, so it'd be 8% raise.
Well, it's not an 8% raise because they would get 2%, whatever their 2% increase is, 2% of that would be increased in the 6, you multiply that by the 6%, that's the increase in longevity. So it's not actually an 8% increase. It's 6% of the 2% on the longevity.
6% of the 2%. So what does that come down to, 2 point something? Is that how it comes out to?
Comes out to what?
They're 2% of 2, so it's 2. It might be like 8,
It's 2.2. I think it's like 2.2.
Essentially of their base salary.
Okay, because I just was going 8%, okay. The phone, 2 lines. You've got 1 phone with 2 lines or 2 phones, 2 lines?
We have 2 lines coming into the office. Some of the phones operate both lines, some operate only one line.
And do you have a fax also?
Yes, that's what the second line is used for. It's
So
a
that's
designated fax line.
I look at this and it's like, you've got all these fax machines for every department. It's like, is there some way to just cut down on the fax machines? Some places do. You send it to one number, it saves money.
Wouldn't you rather keep people in the office working?
What are we talking about?
Well, to me, if people have to get up out of their desk and go to another office to send a fax or get a fax, isn't it better if they're sitting in the office working? We're talking what? $700?
Usage cost and fax. You've got a fax machine in every single office?
No, we're just doing tax collecting.
Right. So I'm looking at the phone,
It's 2
and it comes with 5-year total comes to $4,095.55, and the average is $819.11. So I'm trying to figure out where this other average came from.
What are you looking at?
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the individual pages.
I'm looking at the summary.
Tax collector, it's all here.
It's not a consistent dollar amount each month, it's based on the number of phone calls that we
No,
actually...
I'm just trying to figure out where the average came from, because it doesn't make any sense.
So last year we expended, well, this year we expended through November 30th, $345. So that would be for, I believe it's 5 months.
And I'm just going, I have 4 years of actual, and then there's $900 in the budget for 14 and 2015, and so I added that up and divided it, and it comes out, the average is supposed, well, you show an average here, it's like, what average are you talking about? It's $785.44, my average is $819.11, and then a request for $800. I'm just trying to figure out where you're getting the figures from.
I don't know, but we're gonna beat this thing up for $100 on,
Yeah, we are.
No,
Yeah,
we're
we're
not.
gonna find
No,
out.
we're not.
We're gonna find out
No,
what...
no, we're not. I'm telling you right now. We got bigger things to do than stand here half the night.
It's all like that. I'm trying to figure out where the averages are coming from, because it doesn't make any sense.
It's the average of the actual, not the average of the budget.
Right.
It's all actual, and then I have the budget in there, and then it comes out.
Well, it says 5-year average, so that may be confusing, because the only way you can get a 5-year average is averaging the 9,000. But a 5-year average would go back to 2009,
But you're not averaging that,
10.
because that's a budget, not an average.
That's right, so, is the 5-year average the average expenditure for 5 years?
Yes.
That may be better when we make these, put that in that block that says average expenditure, because we're in the mindset of dealing with budgets.
Right here,
So those are actual expenditures, not actual budget numbers.
To put the
Through
average.
14.
Those are actual
And then 15 is budget, okay. So the 5-year average actual expenses is $785.44. Okay, thanks.
And we gave her 800.
And we're requesting $800 next year?
Yes. Instead of 785.
Why are we banging this around? That's $15. I mean,
Just to let you know, the administrator is looking at the telephone lines in town and trying to find a better vendor. So,
and that's
we're working on
fine,
that.
but,
And everyone has different rates. That's one of our projects, is looking at the telephone vendors.
Get them all in line.
Exactly, yeah.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're dealing with. We're talking about $15 over the 5-year average expenditure. I'm not sure that that's a bad budget.
So that concludes my budget request for 15-16 fiscal year. Do you have any questions?
I just had a question about account is targeted for reduction. Town needs to move to voluntary paperless tax billing and electronic payments. Would it be more mandatory than voluntary? That would save a lot of money.
It would have to be something that that's something we're working towards. So I don't know if you noticed on the tax bills that went out this year, we requested email addresses, and we're starting to compile a database. I've been entering them in. It's not something we're there yet, and the taxpayer would actually have to go online and opt out of the tax bill. You couldn't just stop mailing altogether. A lot of people don't have internet service or email that they would be able to get their tax bill. So it's something in the future that I can see production and postage going down when we have this opt-out service, but it's not in effect and will not be in effect for this year.
You say during next year.
It's in the future, it's coming, I hate to say.
But it's not in this-
It's not, it
in this
definitely will not be.
That's what they want to do.
Any other questions? No. All set? Tony, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy, who's next?
Obviously, assessment.
Yeah. Nancy's trying to figure out a way to get out of this time.
Mind if I start?
Good evening, my name is Dean Robert, I'm the tax assessor. Instead of me just going through the line items and just repeating exactly what's in front of you, I'm not sure if you want me to do that, or you just want to ask questions of the budget.
If you've got anything that you want to highlight it, and I wouldn't necessarily have to go through every one of them, and if there's questions, we'll go back.
Happy to do so. The major thing actually in my budget is that there's a decrease in the supply line item, so we're actually asking for less there. I believe last year it was $5,000, we're only requesting $3,600 this year. And
What's the difference?
the difference is that on a 3-year average out of my department for supplies, let me just find it on this separate sheet here, it's been $3,800. So we're looking to reduce that Part of that reduction actually was from the result of having a new copier for my office. The one that we currently have is about 5 years old. It was basically bought off the shelf for, I think, around $700. So it's kind of coming to its end of useful service, and we're starting to have more service calls on it. So at some point, we are going to be taking a look at potential lease. However, to address the question from the prior department about fax machines and such, that is one of the things that we are taking a look at, is trying to consolidate copies and faxes and that type of thing. So it is being looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And other than that, there's really nothing fantastically different about my budget from last year to this. And as far as the revaluation account, which I'm also responsible for presenting, we're just, again, requesting $53,000. I'm not certain if Matt gave you the work and the breakdown for that, but $53,000 per year in a 9-year cycle. We have to do 3 revaluations. So that 53 will basically make us break even over a 9-year period. We have to pay for the full revaluation, which is generally around $350,000, and we have to pay a portion of the updates that we have to do, which is 2. This may all change next year. Currently, we do have to do a revaluation once every 3 years. The General Assembly has taken a look at adjusting that schedule. A couple of different ideas. Some want to go to a 4-8-12, one want to do a 5-10, so you're only doing 2 revaluations every 10 years instead of 3 every 9. So that's been before the General Assembly for the last 3 years. I'm pretty sure it's going to be introduced again, and whether they're going to go with that, I don't know. Just wanted to give you a heads up that that request may change next year. But currently, the way that the state statute's written, and based on my estimates of what the revaluations are going to cost us, $53,000 budgeted on an annual basis will make us break even after 9 years.
Does that mean hiring extra people to do it, or just extra hours?
Not extra hours. We do hire outside firms to do the revaluations.
So this is an outside, this is a account that's just gradually building up money to pay it when the bill comes due.
Correct. It's a restricted account, strictly just for revaluations.
I have a question. In the line that says professional tech services, can you explain to me what that is?
Sure, and that's actually had a decrease over the years. My 3-year average of that one is almost $5,500. We're bringing it down to $2,500. That's kind of a combination of services that we use. We utilize outside vendor to do tax assessor map updates. So if there's a subdivision or a merger of lots, we have to have that done through a GIS consultant. Not to be confused later on with the GIS database, because I'm breaking it up between updating our tax maps, which have to be done on an annual basis, and then the GIS consultant, as far as the data layers are concerned, that's then taking those maps and then reformatting that data into a geodatabase, which will then allow tax assessor maps to go online onto an online. I'm not sure if you guys have used the online map service or not, but that's digitally taking our tax assessor maps, formatting it to a GIS database that will also allow us to map in my appraisal information into the online maps. So there's 2 kind of different consultants there. One is to do the tax assessor maps updates themselves, which we're actually, we're hoping at some point we're going to do that in-house, because it is expensive going out. The only roadblock to that at this point in time is the expense of the software. The software, the initial purchase of that software is roughly $7,000. And then there's an annual maintenance fee with all these software packages. But we are hoping at some point we're going to be able to do it in-house. And as far as the upfront cost of that software, we're hoping somewhere along the line we can try to apply for a grant that will help offset some of that cost.
What does a usual contract go for with the software or the maintenance of it?
Generally, it's an annual maintenance agreement. Tony spoke about hers. We're basically all utilizing the same vendor. Most of the municipalities are using Vision, used to be called Local. So on an annual basis, there's a software maintenance agreement. Hers is roughly $3,000.
That is, what exactly is it?
Mine's roughly $3,000, and that's for the tax administration software. Tony Lynn has a tax collection software, so they're all different modules. The building inspector, they have a different Vision module. So they're all basically about the same, $2,000 to $3,000 of that cost. And some of the CAMA, which stands for the Computer-Aided Mass Appraisal software that I use, there's a new update for that. And there's also a update for the GIS software that we do have. That is basically just a software where we can query the GIS data, but we can't really edit the GIS data, which would mean doing the subdivisions and the mergers. And that's the $7,000 piece of equipment. Plus it's expensive as far as training. So that's one of the areas that also in my budget, you'll see that the education has gone up as far as the request. My 3-year average had been just about $1,200.
So the education seminars is included in Vision software?
That's not including that, no. That's training on the software options. The GIS training, where we're trying to get myself and Kate Mishaw up to speed as far as being able to do these edits at some point. Those classes are very expensive. I took one last year, and for a week's class, it was $750 just for one class, which is the introductory class. And then for the editing, which is an advanced class, is roughly $750 to do that. And so far, that class has not been offered in the state of Rhode Island. The closest is in Connecticut, so then just travel and overnight expense as well. But it's once we can finally get there, and it is going to be a way to get there, then once we can really fully recognize and utilize the power of the GIS, it's going to be well worth it, because now we can start linking all the different kind of departments into the GIS database. That's going to be very useful. We can put what permits have been pulled on a property level basis. The fire department can utilize where most of their calls are going, where their lines are. Same with the police department, where's a higher rate of crime taking place. So the tool itself is extraordinary, but it's very expensive to get that. Geographical interface.
Sounds exciting.
It's exciting, but it's one of those things too where the software, since it is new to us and the training's been very limited, it is cumbersome. I mean, it's a complicated piece of software. So that's why there's a slow ramp up to full utilization.
What's that? Any questions? Thank you much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Anybody else want to keep Nancy out of the microphone?
Economic development,
Jump in.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Hunter. I'm representing the Economic Development Commission tonight. Put in front of you, before most of you guys here this evening, our program of work, which pretty much sort of outlines what our commission does throughout the year. It's a little fluid. We might be adding to it as we go through the year, but that's what we have for the 2014-15 fiscal year. I share that with you just so you can sort of get an idea of what we are doing. Also, I just want to point out that your commission really is a conduit for discussion. And what we do is we try to bring groups together. We see the value in sharing ideas, thoughts, and it's really come to fruition in a lot of cases. We've been pretty successful with moving the business park forward. We're going to be reaching out to the new governor and her staff shortly to pick up where we left off with the past governor and the Quonset group and a couple other groups, including the Newport County Chamber of Commerce. Moving ahead to the budget, I'll try to make this as short as possible. I see some inconsistencies with the 2015-16 department head request. I'm not quite sure where the 10,300 number came from. However, the budget that I submitted to our administrator, Matt, was $2,000 short of what you see in front of you. And I think what happened was the special projects and events in your pamphlet looks like $6,000, and we had budgeted $4,000. What I'd like to do is, if you wouldn't mind just changing that $6,000 number down to 4 and reducing our overall budget from 10,300 to 8,300.
Scott, what page are you on?
Eight, I'm sorry.
No, I have it in, like, your budget here, it's kind of 8,300, you know?
That's correct.
And go down to where?
We are halfway down under
I see
economic.
it. What's the total then?
It's $8,300.
Okay.
It appears there was a typo on the last line item, which is,
Yeah.
thank you. So most of this is pretty straightforward. A lot of the vast majority of the dollars that we're seeing here, both in the brochure, pamphlets, advertising, is a couple of things that we do annually. Our Vice President, Susan Gill, does a great job getting the Tiverton name out there. I've got a couple of what we produced this past year. These are distributed not only here in Tiverton, but down on the Clinic Island as well, the Visitor Center and other locations. In fact, if it's okay with you, I'll just pass this along so you can take a look at it. This year, we're making a pretty big shift, which is taking up a little bit of money on the special projects and events. What we're going to be doing at the beginning of this fiscal year, coming up 15-16, is we're going to try to get groups of businesses together. And initially, the EDC wanted to sort of take a look at all the businesses as a whole and sort of bring those folks together so we could have a single voice for the town council. If a concern, an item came up, we would have one single voice. What we're looking at now is really separating Tiverton into 3 parcels. That's going to be South Tiverton, the Bliss Corners, and the North Tiverton group. We're going to approach these folks in those groups at separate times throughout the fiscal year 15-16.
What are the 3 sections again?
It's going to be South Tiverton, that would be the Four Corners group, which is already pretty well established. The Bliss Corners,
Lisbon.
and then the North Tiverton corridor.
Okay.
The idea is to get these folks together, see what they have to say, bring their concerns up to the town council, planning board, or the zoning boards, so that we can have a single voice, so that if we hear of one concern, perhaps, there might be several businesses with that same concern, and we'll be able to decipher what that is and better articulate it to the groups that we need to present in front of. We think it's an important strategic plan for the EDC to start bringing these businesses together in a single voice, and we're going to put a lot more energy into making that happen. Most of the special projects and events, that $4,000, that's really all going to be funneled towards this effort. One of the other parts of the communication end is we'd like to take a really big change in how we're communicating what we're doing. We're moving away from the traditional website and moving directly into more social media. We've rebuilt our web page, which is now going to be somewhat static. We won't be updating that as much. However, we've created a Facebook page to complement that. The Facebook page is going to be really our vehicle of getting our word out, messages that we need to get out, and also hearing back from other folks. They can like our page, they can comment on our page. So we just think it's a better, transparent mode of communicating. So like I said, we've already started that. We're going to continue down that path. And that's all I got to say about that. Nice and short.
This may be a bizarre question, but having gone to the planning board meeting, the special meeting, and it sounds like a lot of amendments are being proposed to the comprehensive plan. Where are you in relation to the amendments that are being proposed? Are you backing them? Are you in consult? Is there talking about them? How does that work?
So the EDC was invited to participate in the comprehensive plan review. So I was designated that person. We were working on several elements of the comprehensive plan review, or the comprehensive plan. So I might be a small part of that. And our objective really was to take our body of work and what we thought was important and introduce it into the comprehensive plan.
So I guess the meeting I was at was where the proposed developer for the Sousa Road was talking about all these amendments to the comprehensive plan. Do you have, would you be asked for your input on that? You would not?
It does say here you're supposed to work, you would like to work ordinances and regulations for the comprehensive plan, but it says while preserving and enhancing the town's character. And you weren't asked to take part in that.
Just a comment, this is a budget hearing.
I understand.
Okay, so I don't think we need to get into the sidetracks about who's doing what to whom.
I know, but he wasn't asked for it.
That's fine. That's different from what we're discussing. All set? Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work up here. I know it's not an easy thing to do.
Same with what you do. You finally gonna come up?
Coming right along.
I don't want to block down now either.
No, but I do have 3 handouts for you. Because I thought I'd go over my revenue as well as
Yeah, that's good, because,
budget.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Take one of each of these and pass the others around, please.
So where do you put it, this for?
Yeah. Boy, I can't hide behind that's the most, they find me.
That's the problem.
Good heavens, we can make yourself indispensable.
You know, that's, I'm just passing out my budget because I had to make an amendment on one of them already. And the conveyance tax, that's part of my revenue. And the third item I passed around was the actual revenue reports as of December. Well, I'm concentrating on my end of it, yes.
Right.
Is this all the same? You're just supposed to take one and pass them. There's 3 different.
Oh, sorry, I got 2.
Excuse me.
Not till the meeting's over.
And I'm going to just keep the extras for the... Thanks. I'll keep
wisdom for those members that are not.
Very much.
Yes. That's just some handouts I thought would help you with where the revenue is, where it stands from the clerk's office. And then one packet is the actual budget. Now, what you're going to see, you cannot follow what the administrator's budget is in there for me, because I submit my own. And when he did his, it would not be updated to my figures. He just based it on what was the prior year, okay? So I have already submitted this to you on the 15th.
Right.
Okay. But so why don't we start with one of the easier ones, like probate court. Do you mind if we start with probate court? I just gave you the handout right here. Now you'll see probate court, the only one that will have really changed from what the administrator put forward would be my clerk, and I think we bought canvas. So if, of that set of budgets that I just gave you, if you look at probate court, so you're going to see that probate court is pretty much the same as it has been. There's no increase in there. The judge isn't looking for an increase. Everything kind of stayed on that status quo. The salary is strictly the judge's salary, and probate court's held once a month, and there are various special meetings that can happen throughout the month. Recording fees, that's because everything that we have in probate, you have to remember that's all the original wills, everything's original what we have. That has to be scanned, and we use our ACS system to scan it, which is our recording system, our land evidence system in there. We use that to scan all probate records. So if you get a probate file this big, we're scanning every single one of those pages, and it gets sent to New York. That's so that there is a permanent record. We don't work. Well, that's the headquarters for ACS, where they keep it on disk. But if we have to go and retrieve these records, and we haven't to date, it's going to be expensive. What we do is, we have in the vault, when I came on board about 12 years ago as clerk, we bought new files for the probate, put them all, they used to be in trifold, put them all in folders, and you can see one wall is full of just probate files, and we keep them locked, because they are open record. You could come in and see whatever you want in there, other than, you know, social security numbers or something like that we keep away from you, but you could see that file, but we handle it. It's under lock and key, and we would be with you if you were reviewing
So
anything.
in other words, you have this where you scan it and it's off, but you also have something.
The originals are here, every original,
Okay.
will, and everything else. Now, what happens is, if you ever go to the vault, and you're all welcome to go whenever you choose, you'll see that the whole wall is full of probate files. That's only the last 20 years. The rest are kept downstairs, which we use as an archive room, but it's really not archive, it's the basement. With the water lines and sewer lines and everything. Now, we've gotten grants throughout the years, and we have gotten all archival boxes. We've brought the state archives down here to at least show them what we've done. And it's the best we can do in these circumstances. We refiled everything and all, but that's not permanent enough down there. Obviously, if the catastrophe happened to the building,
Had a fire or
those records are gone.
Yeah.
And that is not recorded the way the law requires you to, but it would be hundreds of thousands to do all them. So we have done the last 20 years, and we keep moving forward doing it properly, and I keep trying to get little bit by bit back. So that's what the $1,000 does. And it's difficult if you look in the revenue report, which is, or the budget report, you'll see that it's not always spent till the bitter end, because we send the disc every 4 months to New York, and it comes back, we'll get a bill once a year on that. The program software is only $300, we use L&L data. It's a very inexpensive software, but we're able to elaborate onto it. So if you come in, your file is also in our computers, which we back up. And then supplies and folders, that's the folders, we put them in, the postage, the citations, the summons we send out, things like that. So we kept that budget the same level it has been for years. And if you look on this sheet that I handed you out, the revenue sheet, and you went to probate court, which I think is on page 2, you'll see that we estimate about 25,000 comes in on revenue. It's the very first one on the second page. And so far to date, that's what that end column is showing. So for year to date, I've actually collected 12,914, and I'm 12,085 short of reaching that goal. By the way, the treasurer runs this off every month. It's on clerk base because we submit it to the council. But this is a valuable report. It lists each revenue and where it's coming from, and it's only 4 pages, and the last page and a half just summarizes it by account number. It's just repeating it. So it's a quick glance at where the revenue's coming and where it hits or targets what we estimate at.
Is this about the halfway mark?
Well, on probate it is. Now, I have to tell you, probate, we generate income because it's 1% of what the inventory of the estate is. So if there is no inventory on the estate, then we don't collect other than the $34 petition. If we had a $1 million estate, we still only can collect the maximum amount of $1,500. So, you know, it runs by that. And I have to tell you, most probate cases now are contested, and you could be hearing the same $34 petition for 2 or 3 years. In every one, you know.
Why see it in the paper over and over again? Oh, I guess that's what it is.
And the reason you see it in the paper is because we're required to advertise
Yeah.
probate
It seems like
3
the same
times.
one.
But we have to do it 3 times before the probate hearing date, in case any debtors are out there or anything like that. So, but I mean, that isn't, I find this a really valuable, the treasurer puts it out, that and the expense record every month. So if the budget committee so wanted it, and you sent me an email, I'd make sure you had copies. So that's the probate one. Now, the municipal court one, I serve as municipal court clerk as well. That, again, I believe is not changed from, well, it has, I'm sorry, it's gone up about $98. That's because we have a part-time clerk. He works from 8:30 to 11:30 on Monday to Thursdays. It is a non-union position, therefore when he is not at his desk, the rest of the staff cannot handle the payments that come in. I have to handle them myself, because that is a non-union position. So, now that the state has increased the cost of some of these fines, but the bulk of that is going to the state. So even though the revenue may come in a little higher, what is going to the state is also higher. And you're going to find that on a lot of my clerk revenues, which is why I gave you that conveyance schedule there. You're going to find that just because we collect $300,000 doesn't mean that's what's going in the general fund. And that kind of just gave a breakdown for a few years. This is kind of helpful. So right now, if you look at the revenue on the municipal court, it's brought in $36,000. It's estimated $65,000. That's going to be a little hard to reach this year, even though that's only 6 months, so it looks like we're going to hit it. Because a lot of what we get in municipal court is these seatbelts violations. And or even if you had a speeding ticket, you could go to court, and if you had a good driver record, you can get just court costs. Well, now the state, as of last July, added a $25 surcharge to it if you use that good driver record, but it goes directly to the state. So we may collect it, but it's not necessarily that we're getting it. Remember, we're like a conduit for the state to collect a lot of these fees. That's how the state runs. So we look like we're on target, and this comes out every single month, so any department can keep tracking to make sure, like in a lot of them, you're not gonna be able to do anything. If probate inventories don't come in, you can't make that come in.
Right.
But, on other ones, we can push harder to get some. The bailiff, we used to budget $50 every court session. Municipal court meets twice a month. They do not have special meetings, but they do meet twice a month. The bailiff is the police officer that we used to have on duty. We used to pay him $50 a hearing. Now the chief has worked it out so that they earn comp time for it. So we're not actually paying them. Except on occasion, if a certain one isn't on duty, we gotta get them in to do it or something like that. So we reduced that a few years back, and we now, 500 more than satisfies it. The clerical assistant, that's the person who works the 12 hours a week. He makes a part-time salary, $14.91. They base it on the union one, but he is not union. And then he comes in for the courts as well. And I'm here at the courts. Telephone is $350, over the average, that's about what it is. He only has that one line in there. Office supplies, I never push to increase their office supplies. I've explained to the budget committee every year that when I run short on budget supplies for the municipal court or the probate court, I'm taking them from the clerks. I mean, we're gonna have the supplies we need to run, but this keeps it pretty clean by saying we average about that amount. But obviously, if his computer broke down, I'm gonna get him a computer. And if I have to take it out of my account, that's where it'll come from. And we leave $1,000 in there to meet the demands of the new state requirements. We do not utilize the state's program because it would cost us something like $17,000 for the initial investment. We're kind of humming along with what we've got. And we do a lot on, but we do a lot on spreadsheets, things like that. We're not really utilizing what we could tap right into the states because it's just too expensive. And he's only there 12 hours a week. That's an expensive software program for. Now, at some point, the state's going to say, we won't take it like this anymore. You've got to get into our program. And I know the police department has changed over some of theirs to meet the state requirements, but they utilize it in other areas as well. But just for this court one, that's a lot of money to get into. So the state hasn't pushed, but I have to tell you, there aren't many communities not on it.
Do they help pay for it if they start
No,
pushing?
so that's why we're handling it as we are. Yeah, you're gonna find that all over the place.
No such thing.
Yep. So, municipal court, I don't know what Matt has that's different than mine. I guess in the salary.
What page are you on?
I don't know what Matt provided, I'm just looking at his general book,
What page?
I'm looking at page 6. He's got 26,148, I've got 25,808.
Right.
But that's the budget I've presented. So I ask that you please go by my budgets for now. That is how the charter's set up.
What's the computer connection to the clerk's office?
The computer connection to the clerk's office is this. I have a computer, what I have is an old computer here. I can't tie into his office, which is downstairs. So all day long as I get, and all day on Friday, as I get these people in, my license is suspended, I need to see this, I don't have my bill, I can't see his program unless I take the key, go downstairs, turn his computer on, I don't have the time to be doing this back and forth all day.
What does this require?
It's going to require that we upgrade that old computer,
Yeah.
which I've kind of been holding off in case one of these other computers need more upgrade for the additional work they do, and maybe that one would suffice to help and get it loaded up on here and and get it upstairs too. Because I mean, from the counter, I can go to my office and look up the ticket, but I'm not going downstairs and turning on a computer every time I.
So you are connected, you can be connected.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not...
I'm not connected now, but I'm hoping to.
Does that mean the line doesn't exist to connect you, or that the computer won't handle the connection?
The line doesn't exist, and the computer I have is
Okay,
just a
so
real.
you would have to run the line up and put a computer, or the wireless.
We've spoken to the computer tech that we
Okay.
use, and
Line and computer.
Right.
I just hold off doing it until I like to do that stuff at the end of the year, if there is, if I can group money.
Can I
Absolutely.
just ask you, that $1,000 from that computer line was transferred and hold to the unfunded account of 2014? So,
It wasn't, it was what? It was
It's
put back in the
transferred.
general fund.
no, it was transferred to that unfunded
Oh,
2014.
we have to, that's the administrator who, in the end, took the funds. But yes, we did not use it at the end of last year, because I'm still not connected. So it would have gone back into the general fund, or if the administrator put it there, well, he utilized it. But it would have gone back. I did not spend it. I didn't spend it on the computer, so I did not spend it.
What was it spent on? Put it in the unfunded, that crazy thing that I should have.
But like, it was
But I'd have to say, if he had just, said, hey, I've got money that I didn't, does anybody have money not spent so that we can pay these bills that we did? I would have gladly said, yeah, it's right here, use it.
So you didn't know you did that?
Yeah, I guess I did, but I don't remember.
All right.
I mean, I don't recall, I just know what I didn't spend on the budget.
Right.
So it did not, and I would not have spent it on something other than that computer when I know I need it.
Right.
But we keep holding off, and until, as long as I can hold off, I'm not gonna do it. As long as I can hold off buying the computer, I'm not gonna. Because then it's gonna cost me more than $1,000. So is there anything else on that one? Now, Board of Canvas. I think the original,
Can I just ask one quick
Yeah,
question
sure.
about the computer? So if you budget $1,000 in case you need to upgrade the computer, and then you don't do it that year, why does that money get transferred to be used somewhere else as opposed to put in a special fund?
sure, we can't carry it forward. We can't carry forwards. So there's no carrying forward. So that money has to go back into the general fund. However, before June 30th, if there was an expense in another department, the administrator has the ability to transfer the money and pay that expense, which is where Madeline talks of what we labeled unfunded. Is that what it was called? Unfunded.
Denise Surratt had.
Meaning, these were the bills that came up that we didn't have money to pay.
Line item wasn't on the budget.
We paid it, the town pays all the bills now.
Right.
We pay the bills. But if we didn't know which account was gonna have money left in it yet, we paid the bill in that holding account and then transferred the money from wherever there was money available to pay it. So, for instance, one of those bills that I recall was Giroux, because that was when I was acting as, those, not all those accounts are mine, but when I was serving as administrator, I remember Giroux, and I remember the senior kitchen. Now, there could be something else, I don't have the documents.
The other thing I found strange was the fact that that account number was not in the budgets.
Because it's not a budget number, it's an accounting number downstairs. She has other numbers that you don't see in the budget. Like all these revenue accounts, you don't see them in the budget, but they're there, and they may be broken down different than the way you see them on the docket. On the docket, you may see revenue grouped together, but we have all different account numbers that we send it down on. So there is a lot of, for whatever accounting system she's using, which is great, it doesn't matter that it's not you're mixing budget numbers with accounting numbers. And it doesn't, and when Denise is in front of you, she'll be much better at explaining all that.
Right.
Her system is an excellent system down there. So in other words, when I paid that Giroux bill, I think it was $12,500 something, as best I remember, I don't have documents. When I paid that bill, I could have at that day said, okay, This is an unexpected bill that showed up. We had to pay it, or we were gonna pay interest and be penalized and go to court and this, that, and the other. So we had to pay this $1,250. It was an agreement that had been made years prior on the industrial park. I wanna say 10 years prior. Now, I could be off a little bit, but I wanna say 10 years prior. I could have said that day, okay, who has money that you haven't spent? But we were in January, and I would have been reluctant to say, oh yeah, take my computer money. I didn't know if I was gonna get to use that before June. So instead of saying, okay, take it from the sand account, and hope we don't have another storm where we need it, we said, we pay the bill and we put it in that unfunded account. We just named it that, or unbudgeted. We just named it for accounting purposes. We never went beyond the money we had. We just said, instead of making those transfers, let's give these departments a few more months to see where they can save some money and where we're gonna get it from. Because whatever is not spent, I could have taken that $1,000 and said, oh, I'm gonna buy supplies with it for my own department. But that's not how this works. We had expenses, we had to meet them. So towards the end of the year, the administrator starts to say, what you're spending, no spending, we gotta cover these bills, and we have to cover them within our budget. So I don't know, but he might have said to some, like, no, Nancy, don't go buy the new copier because we're short money, you're gonna have to hold off a year. I'm just using that as an example. He did not say that.
So would it be more accurate, for instance, on this municipal, I don't know who sees this particular budget we're looking at now. Is this-
What's that, municipal court?
Yeah.
Who sees it? Me, I oversee that budget.
No, I know you oversee it. Like, who's looking at this? Does an average taxpayer look at this? Do they see this?
It's in the docket.
Okay, so would it be more accurate to say potentially necessary to meet demands of new state requirements, if not, goes to general fund?
I guess that's semantics, because anything not spent in here, and when you take the audit report, you're gonna find the actuals of every single account listed in there,
Yeah.
and the overages and shortages on each account, and how much went back into the fund. That's in the audit report.
Okay.
And you're gonna see that plus and minus throughout, because we're not a bottom line.
Okay.
So you're trying to, fit it into that little line. But just like I said, if municipal court, if his computer breaks downstairs, do we stop taking tickets? No, we're gonna get him a computer. And we might not exactly know where that money's gonna come from that day. We know it's gonna come from within whatever the bottom line, whatever the departments have that was appropriated. But maybe I'll say, he needs a computer for $700, and maybe I'll say, well, gee, we didn't use all our recording money, or we didn't use our photocopy lease money, and we'll pay for it that way. Somehow we're gonna pay for it. It's still in operations of that department. And it can come from other departments, although I have not seen I shouldn't say that, but I've never done salaries between departments. I don't do that. But I have always, at the end of the year, lots of times, somebody will be out of phone money because you're putting all little bits throughout this. And I'll say, look, yeah, I still got $42 on my phone account, you can put against yours. We don't see a problem in that. It's really how you're gonna operate the entire building.
It's the same thing, example I mentioned
Yeah,
last
it's
week.
little departments.
It's the same thing you do in your household
budgets,
budget.
but, yeah,
And traditionally,
but you can no way go over it.
no,
You can't spend one penny more than was appropriated.
right, and that's the reason at the end of the year, virtually every town treasurer starts moving, you have that account where unbudgeted, and you have balances left, and you start
For accounting
turning off, and
purposes, it makes it
you account for
easier.
it all, and you don't go over budget,
No.
over the bottom line budget.
Listen, I remember I started as treasurer for 10 years,
Yeah.
and treasurer collector before I went to clerk. You would not, nothing ran in the red.
No,
You don't run in the red. But for that month, it might have been that the heat was, in the red, but the electric was over and you haven't done the transfer into the heat. That's accounting.
That's right.
That's the accounting and the treasurer's work. But for the budgeting in that department, I can see, oh, I'm gonna be short here, I'll have to take it from here to put here, because I gotta pay the heat, or I gotta pay the electric, or I gotta pay,
I wonder how Lincoln runs, because they don't do any transfers until the fourth quarter.
That's what I just
well,
said.
that's what they would do. You think they're not paying your bills that came due? No way, you'd be paying interest. They're holding it in an accounting system, and then on the fourth quarter, when everybody's more or less spent what was necessary, you have a better idea. You're exactly saying what I'm saying, madam.
Right, what I'm saying here now, they take the transfer first quarter, second quarter, third quarter.
They don't do well sometimes,
Doesn't matter.
and I don't know.
Doesn't matter when you do
I haven't seen a
it.
lot of transfers other than overtime.
Everybody has a different way of doing it.
But that's exactly what I'm saying, as opposed to saying in January when that Giroux bill came due, give them a chance to get further through the year, because I don't know what's going to happen. So you are in fact, it's really just agreeing with what I'm saying. That is an accounting.
Because it's no different than your house. So you plan that you may want to buy a computer, but your roof
gotta
goes
wait
off.
till-
So you have to look at where that money's going to come from. So you have to.
There's a lot of unexpected
You have to
costs that come up every year.
prioritize.
The only thing is, with your own budget, nobody else is giving you the money for it.
That's the budgeting
Nobody else
process.
is giving you the money for this.
But it's the same process.
It's the same process. The taxpayers are giving us money based on a budget. And as Nancy is saying, you don't go over budget,
Not a
bottom
penny.
line.
I can only think of two, and they were judgments that I've ever seen in 24 years
So-
go over. If it's a legal judgment where the court says you will pay for whatever, and I've only, I think, seen it once or maybe twice.
My experience has always been to charge it a cost to the line that it's supposed to be charged to. I don't use that holding account, and when you get a monthly statement, you look, you see some are in the red. But you know, you have others that are in the black and are not going to get used, and as you progress along, you keep those in mind, and you can move money around. And a lot of it is done at the end of the year, when you know pretty well what we're going to spend.
But they don't do that, they do it.
I guess if you do too many accounts allowing on the red, and then you don't have the money to cover, what do you do then?
You know, you make the transfer whenever you make the transfer.
And I can tell you Denise, when she comes before you, she's better at explaining it going through the department.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's just what we're doing. Holding it till towards the end and saying, but it doesn't mean that in Lincoln, the expense didn't happen before the fourth quarter. All their emergencies don't happen in the fourth quarter now. It happens throughout, and their accounting is holding to get the transfer to cover
That's all
it.
it is.
That's, we're essentially, that what you're saying was essentially the same thing.
Everybody has different procedures on how to
Yeah.
do that.
But in my case, I try to keep it within my departments, but I do often cover from, like municipal court into probate or vice versa. Okay, so we're on Board of no other, unless somebody else has a question. So we're on Board of Canvases. Now, in the 2012-13, or 13-14, we had a resolution that said the electors would put a sum of money into the election account, and it would be placed in a new restricted election reserve account. So we had decided that what we would do, rather than get these peaks and valleys on elections, we would budget 30,000 one year, 15,000 the next, 30 the next. So this is a year that we have 15,000. Now, in the calendar year of 2016, I am going to have 4 elections. Well, one being the FTR, but I'm going to have a presidential preference in April. I'm going to have a primary in September and the general election in November. So just because the primary is in September, the preparing of all this and a lot of the training that goes on for all this at the Board of Elections and all, and some of the costs, generates long before that. So it will generate from some of this. Plus, I will have a presidential preference on there too. So that 15, and what I would like the Budget Committee to do, the same way they keep that resolution on there See, this past year, it wasn't on there. The same way they keep that resolution on there for the reval money, we need to keep that going for the election money. Otherwise, I have to budget 30,000 instead of the 15.
Well, that is restricted though, right?
Right, but we need to keep the resolution on, or move the resolution so that it stays until further notice. Because if I can't keep that as a continuing account, and I lose that money into the general fund, I have to rebudget. And then I'm gonna spike you up at 45 and 60,000.
Well, let us know what it takes, because that doesn't make any sense, that money can then get taken away for the general fund
Because
at the end of a
we
fiscal
don't
year. That
transfer,
doesn't
so
work.
only by resolution do we set these to continue on, because we don't, do carry forwards and stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll run out, so you're gonna have to redo it.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, as I told John today, I happened to be on the website at some other communities' budgets. And I got to tell you, there are not many communities in Rhode Island where the clerk is handling these elections. They just are not. There's registered voters. If you go to Portsmouth, they've got a budget of $173,000 just for the elections and the board, the register of voters. In Tiverton, it's all done in the clerk's office. And I mean, we handle it, but every year I say, someday something's going to happen, and you're going to regret that this is how we just handle it. But last year, the Budget Committee did see to make my part-timer a full-timer, and she concentrates on water canvas work all day. Now, she can still do recording, she still covers lunches, she can do a marriage certificate, but she concentrates on it.
Who's that?
And that would be Jeannie. She's our newest, she's only been there since last July, so it was very difficult for her to get through this election cycle. And, because the problem is, when you lose staff from the clerk's office, you're gonna lose it all at once. And you're gonna lose a lot of the knowledge in there. So we keep everybody cross-trained, and we try to, do what we can to keep everybody ahead in here. But that is, we are doing it at a minimal cost because we cover a lot, and I cover a lot, which means most of my clerk work falls behind then during election time.
How much money is in that account right now? Do you know offhand?
We spent, of the 30,000 appropriated last year, we have 2,000 something left in it. I've got it right here.
Well, how much is,
There's 2,588 out of 30,000 this past year.
okay, so, in general, how much does it cost to run an election? Let's say it's the presidential primary or whatever it is.
Well, this past year, for the primary and the general,
Yeah,
it cost me about $27,500, because I have 2,500, just from that 30,000,
Okay.
2,500. But next year is a presidential
Right.
election. That's a lot more costly.
well, that's why I'm wondering.
That's more costly, but remember, I have that 15,000 that we carry forward, and I'm asking for another 15, and this is only going to take me from July 1st of 2015
To make
to June 30th. So for the next year's budget, I will have to go back up to the 30,
Right.
so that I kind of...
For the general election.
15,
For the president.
yeah.
For the general election in November.
Presidential one
Okay.
is November, yeah. So I have another budget in between,
All right.
which is why, and I know Matt, on his original budget that he sent to you, did not have anything in there for election, but follow my budget that I'm giving you, that's where that's in there. I think he added it back in as well.
Yeah.
He added it back in, okay. I think what you have in your book versus what you were handed, clocked in and handed on the 15th, there's a few variations there, and he put that back in. He's trying to keep up with what he can as what and the council is doing workshops, so it is going to change. Computer services, that's our computer services. The state no longer provides all this. The state always provided. All our computers were state computers. The state printers, state computers, everything. They don't provide them anymore. You have, your computer breaks, you have to, and it has to be dedicated to election. So we have a printer dedicated to it, we have everything dedicated to it. So that's for our computer services. And then our supplies of 3,000, it's not an election, a big election year, and like I say, we'll go back and forth with supplies. So that takes care of the Board of Canvas, if anybody has any issue on it, questions on it. Then I'd like to do the FTR. Now, we did get approved at the last FTR that we would be changing the financial town referendum to a Saturday, and we're expecting that should save us some money. I did do the runoff, and I don't know what I did with it, but I did have the runoff on this, and last year, I think we spent 13,000. We always go a little over.
What's the runoff?
On the runoff?
No, not the runoff, for the referendum. Oh, the runoff of the expenses. You can get any account number and just get a runoff, and you'll see everything spent under that account number.
No, when you say possible runoff, what?
Yeah, and here it says.
Possible runoff is if there's ever a need to have a runoff. If in fact some budget doesn't win by the majority, by the supermajority. Isn't that what it is, a
You have to
supermajority?
win by a majority,
Supermajority.
supermajority, and if no one does, then you have a runoff between the two highest.
Which generally wouldn't happen if you only had one or two.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many you have to create that. I don't know, would 3 make it?
Well, 3 could.
Create, I don't know.
3 could.
But in the past, the budget committee has told me they're not gonna approve budgeting anything, because all you'd be doing is budgeting, not holding it, turning it back in, budgeting it again, charging and putting it back in.
Well, that's fine, as long as there's some money sitting somewhere that you can pay for the runoff.
Well, I can tell you why we'll have it.
So,
It will take place, so we'll have to take it out of council contingency or something, but if
Yeah,
it's a
somewhere.
runoff, it's gonna take place.
So what are you saying about the 3?
The three
You
what?
just said something about 3.
Oh, I'm saying, I don't think it could happen with just 2, like if there was the budget committee's petition and say 1 petitioner.
No. Majority wins on that.
Right, so, but what happens if there's 3?
If there's 3,
It
you
could,
either have to have a supermajority, and then that person wins, or
Or
the
you
two
could
highest
go to a runoff, so that's what I'm saying.
Supermajority.
over
More than 50%.
That's just, okay, in my mind, that's just a majority.
Right, so if you
No,
didn't
I know what you
have
mean.
one,
Yeah,
so if you had
somebody has to
100
have-
voters and it was 30, 30, 30,
Yeah, somebody has to have no.
you're gonna have a runoff.
Okay,
So, I'm just saying, we should be aware of it.
yeah.
Other years I tried to see possible runoff, I put 7,000, but it's never been appropriated. I assume have to go to the council contingency or something if that happened. But we know that in May.
What is it?
So your number,
South Fork, but
your number is 12,000 and Matt's is 12,500. So should
I
we
presented the budget for
go
that,
with yours?
so go with mine. Because Matt, no, really, Matt at the time, he wouldn't have all my runoffs and everything, and he would be looking, he's probably trying to keep it as clean as possible, because if he's doing the average
Deb, what page is Matt's on?
8, where I would probably say, if I run over 12,000, I'm gonna take it from my vote canvas, or from my clerks. It's gonna get done, it's not a big number, it's not a big number, and it will get done, so I don't really, I think the 12,000 should handle it.
It's the last line before the total.
Yeah, you got it, thank you.
How does the cost of the FTR compare with the cost of putting on the town meeting, financial town meeting? Just
Well,
curious.
it's more, it's obviously more, it's not double, but it is more, because at the financial town meeting, we used to have to rent the sound systems and,
Right.
yeah, you still have the advertising and stuff, but remember, for the FTR, we do a absentee voting, which is usually 2 to 3 days before the FTR. You pay poll workers there. You've got to set up, you've got to get your canvassing done, you've got advertising for your canvassing. So it's more in advertising and all, But it's an election, it's become an election, and elections are more costly than just having the town meeting. Yeah, I wouldn't say it doubled it, but it's up
The
there.
participation has been,
The participation has been good.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always going to depend on whether or not there is something kind of challenging on it. Do we have more than one petition? Is there something people don't like on there? Is there, so, yeah, there's always going to be like
How much
that.
more is the FTR than the town meeting? I thought it was going to be cheaper. I thought it was.
FTR, an election could never be as cheap as, but the results of what you want the
How many
results of
times
be.
did you have to go the second meeting though at the
I know, but we didn't pay for the high school. What did we pay for? We didn't pay for the condos, we didn't pay for the...
that's the number of
We
people.
weren't running canvas books, we weren't running canvassing, we weren't staying open the last day, 30 days before to make sure you had a chance to register to vote. I mean, obviously, it's an election, but it's a small election. Yeah, it's definitely more than a FTM.
No, I remember it, I thought it was going to be cheaper than.
Yeah,
I don't think
how
I
it
would
could
say it's
possibly
going to
be
be cheaper because it's an election.
Yeah,
But you
because
have
got-
greatly increased participation, so.
You do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you compare the numbers, although there were times we had FTMs with, the heyday of it, and we had big participation too. But anyway, so we seem to be able to do it in there. We're doing it with the staff we have, and unless there's any problems, we're okay with it, because that is an election.
Just keep doing more and more with less and less.
Well, no, but I'm just
Because you can do
saying,
everything
when
with
you
nothing.
are running all your elections and saying, oh yeah, just throw that into the clerk's office, you're gonna eventually get what you're paying for. Eventually. Okay, so now it's clerk. Did anybody care about that? Anyone, the FDR?
Yeah, you're big time about.
No, I mean about the budget for it. If we need a runoff, we'll be calling volunteers.
That sounds good.
All right, so now we're on the clerk budget. And what I distributed to you comes from the revenue side. If you want to do why don't we do the expense side first? I just want to brief you a little bit on the revenue side after. And on the clerk's budget, it's going to be different than what is in that, in what was presented to you, okay? Because I believe that still shows a part-timer. So you're going to have to, in fact, I just mentioned today, I'll try to start it next week, because I'm going to be doing it for the council with their workshops. I have the budget as Matt has proposed it. I just don't want to step on his toes. I don't know if he's going to be doing it, so I don't want, I've got to check with him first. And I have it in my laptop. And as changes go, I will keep them in red and change them so that I've got an ongoing, so that the town's aware of where it stands. So you need to look at these pages, which are going to affect all those numbers that I'm giving you, okay? So the salary, I put in a 2% increase. I know, John, I'm underpaid, it's okay.
Talk about bang for the buck.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. There's 2% on that.
I'm serious.
The staff is now 4 full-timers. And that's the exact by contractual amount that they will be making. I believe, I put it somewhere, it's like 38 something for the top clerk and 36 something for each other. They work 32 and a half hours. The longevity, I'm sorry, these additional hours, that 5,800 that's there, that is, the bulk of that is paid to the clerk that comes to the council meetings. And there's no way I can pay attention to what's going on as you have a problem here. I take all the notes too, I review all, I go through that whole thing. But the minutes that are taken at a council meeting are very in-depth minutes. I'm sure everybody's seen a copy of them. They go 9 and 10 pages because they are referenced constantly, and they are the history of what each issue that has happened. I am the only one who goes into executive session. 9 minutes are taken only by me in there. and I review all these minutes, and I may change as I change and do whatever. But they're all kept in the vault in council meeting books, and the public is in there constantly looking at them. And you need a little more than just, for these purposes, you can put discussion, presentation by the clerk on it. But for that, they want to know who voted it, what was the discussion, what was the controversy over the issue. So they're pretty in-depth minutes, and I would never have the time to do them during the day. I don't even do my executive session minutes here, they're all done at home. And I'm driving, brought back in. I do not type my minutes here. I don't have time.
So we did not get the figures, quite a big difference from yours.
I think it took them from last year.
Minus $20,000.
Whose is minus 20,000?
Yeah, more.
Where? From salary, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I think he's got 138, doesn't he?
Yeah, so you've got 155, 314 with the,
Yeah, well, you see that 12,960? That's the part-time salary that became the full-time, and he left it off. He eliminated it, but the person's full-time in there.
so there's a lot of mistakes in this thing.
No, I'm just saying, my budget is presented to the budget committee separately, so it may not jive with his.
Well, what I'm saying is, this here, his number, total number can't be right because he left out 12,960.
Right, but I didn't leave it out. He doesn't have to present the clerk's budget. By charter, the clerk presents her budget.
That was 2014-15.
Oh,
He's saying,
sorry.
town administrator recommended.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah, he doesn't recommend my budget, though. Don't you remember the charter? He doesn't recommend my budget, so I hadn't given him my budget.
well, no, but the thing of it is if that person exists and is working, then that should have been in his budget.
But he
Whether I
doesn't-
agree with you or not. Unless
No,
my
I
fire person-
present it, so it was in my budget. I present anything with my,
He doesn't have.
anything under the clerk, which is everything you've seen tonight.
If he's gonna give you a thing and say, it was on the front page of the newspaper, the town administrator's budget is 2%, and he's leaving,
He doesn't deal with the town, he doesn't deal with
Deal
it.
with it. The charter says he presents the municipal budget except for the treasurer and the clerk.
I don't know where you are.
I'm on page 5.
And he would have had my budget when he was preparing that.
How can he come up with an accurate number if he doesn't have?
He has doing that, constantly.
Recommended general fund expenses, that this is what,
But Madeline, he is changing and modifying that budget continually. As the council gives him direction to where they want to go on the budget, he's got to keep changing those numbers.
Okay.
It's a work in process.
I just figure something like that, if the person is in place and is working, that
Yeah, I
should
could have given
it's
that,
enough way
but I put it with my budget instead, Madeline.
Okay.
So that is the budget.
I don't understand why he would
There's still a discrepancy to do it. There's more than,
149 is 138, 148, 149.50, yeah, I saved you a couple of bucks.
That really
138 and
that really
12 is over
I don't
150.
see what you're looking at. That's terribly confusing.
Well, that's because that's how the charter goes. He should have left all those numbers out, and then you would have to add all mine in anyway.
Well, that's all well and good, but as Madeline said, if you add yours in, his bottom line becomes higher.
Yes.
Not by a lot, but it comes higher, so
Yes.
the 1% increase is not, or whatever it is, 2%, whatever he's saying.
John, I'll bet
it's
that
a little bit.
percent is going to change up or down all through this process.
I'm sure, but,
Because he hasn't heard from the council on this yet.
yeah, it just, to me, it doesn't make sense to even put that in there, because that is confusing,
should just leave it empty.
but,
Yeah, well, at any rate, he did not have my budget at the time, so.
You have it.
So this is exactly by contract, the 4 full-timers.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's only $3,000 difference, but
yeah.
it is confusing.
For instance, here, longevity is 5,235, his is 6,500.
I'm just looking at the bottom line.
Based on last year's. Look what he did. He didn't change anything.
Yeah, just carried it over. Just carried it straight across.
Well, no, that's his numbers, I guess. I don't know. Well, anyway, I'm here for my budget.
Yeah.
So
And that needs,
that is
that's
exact
confusing.
contractual to the penny of my 4 full-timers. Then this additional hours, I told you that, is the clerk doing, remember, you're paying these overtime, you're paying $32.07 this year on overtime. And these meetings go on in open session for several hours, and she's paid for that. Also, and we try to be very restrictive on it, but any other overtime that is paid in that office, and we don't really have overtime by contracts, they should be accumulating comp times, so we try to restrict it to that, but it's difficult to give these people more time off than they're getting contractually. And my office stays open all day. The other departments close during lunch. I cannot close my office during lunch. If I'm here, I just cover it with whoever is on as they rotate their lunches. But if somebody's out sick or something, it's difficult. You can't leave one person in the town hall alone, so I always have to have 2. So often if somebody's sick, somebody is working a half-hour overtime in there. Because if I shut my office down for lunch, and this happened, I don't know, about 5-7 years ago that they did this, I refused to shut my office because I have title workers and everything that come from all over. I have the public first hits there. And if I were to shut down my ACS system and stop recording to get these people out to lunch, you'd only have a minimal amount of time to get in there and record anything.
Okay, it's always bugged me, the people who work, when is their logical time to come into town hall? It's noon to 1. And then you walk in and you find out that it's closed.
Yeah, but John, I gotta say,
And
that
that's-
post office tries to accommodate
No, I'm just saying.
best we
that
can. I'll stay after if you're trying to pick up something.
The concept that you should be able to go into any office and get service on your lunch break, and the office should make some arrangement. That's always just been very frustrating in many, many places that I've lived or worked.
Well, we do, we stay
Yeah.
open, so sometimes there's a little cost to doing that, a half hour here or
There
there.
will be.
I guess
But-
Matt would be in charge of changing those.
It's just my own
So,
personal.
longevity, contractual, and by the way, that longevity is only for 3 of my clerks. The 4th one doesn't even qualify for longevity. You have to have worked 5 years. The last contract, when they were getting flat amounts, and the council was trying to eliminate somehow it went to percentage amounts. So I have 2 people getting 6% of their salary, and I have someone getting 5% of, no, 3% of her salary. So, and it goes up in stages. It's like 5 to 9 years, you get 3%, 10 to 14 years, you get 5%, 15 years to something, you get 6%. So I have, and that is exact dollars to contract. Recording expenses, I believe I wrote that down 2,000. I did.
Do you know why?
Yes.
Yeah, because I didn't spend it all last year, so I just did an average of it. But that's difficult to predict, because my recordings, if they go up as sales go on and things like this, as sales start to pick up and all, in years to come, that may climb back up. But at one point, I was $40,000 on recordings, and we have kept it more down in line. So I took 2,000 off that, assuming we'll get through that. Codification, I'm actually behind on that. I like to do it in the fall, and I didn't do it this fall. And it will be
What is that?
more than 6,000. That's the code of ordinances. So I have what I should have sent in around November. I usually do it in the fall, and I had a rough time through the
So
holidays.
this is
and stuff.
updating new
Yes,
ordinances?
whatever passes as ordinances has to keep being recodified. The charter was changed with the FTR the last time by changing the date.
Yeah.
That has to be recodified, things like that. And that's by law, you have to codify. Supplies and miscellaneous, 8,600.
In that regard, can I mention, if you look at the town charter right now,
It's the wrong.
it
yeah,
doesn't
it's gotta be
indicate the
codified.
third Saturday.
Right, because that happened in May, and I codify, send everything. You send it down actually to Florida, it's movie code, and they do pretty much.
I was personally trying to
So usually by
remember
the
the second or
fourth.
third.
Right, I would send each item, because I mean, the council is continually, changing ordinances, amendings and things like that.
Yeah.
And then in November, we just send down the file of it, and they bring it back up. There's a fee, of course, that we're paying to keep that on. The supplies I kept at 8,600, because that seems to handle us, and like I say, whatever it doesn't goes back in the general fund, or I might offset one of my other accounts with it. And then the photocopier, if you remember, if you were on the budget committee last year, you remember that I said the lease is up, we pay $1,040 for the service contract on it, they can come 100 times, it doesn't matter. We actually own the copy machine. Now, do we have, that thing is running all day long, if anybody's ever been to the, now, should we have another one? Yeah, we should have probably got another one last year. But I say, since we own it, let's just run it till it doesn't work anymore and then get one. So I could catch myself in a trap there, because should I have to sign a lease, it could be more expensive than the money that I have here for the year.
Do we still have a maintenance contract on that one?
$1,040, it's the original maintenance contract, and we won't give it up.
We'll just write it out.
Well, that's what I'm gonna do, but should that thing break tomorrow, I've got to get into a new lease. And I think the administrator, it might have been under Mr. Gonslow, has a couple of these on the same lease with his, and I think a couple, but mine has always been separate because it's still riding that same old lease before they had the bigger machines. And so I'm just gonna keep running it until one day we can't run it anymore.
So that's where your budget ends.
Right.
Why does Matt have advertising ordinances, 10,000? What's that all about?
No, that was, because he took from last year on what was there, because he didn't, that is because, those advertising ordinance, that was a lot of discussion last year. That was for the comp plan was going to have rewrites and ordinances and whatever ordinance changes from, we're going to all have to be advertised, and that money was put in there for that purpose. Now, it doesn't belong under the clerk to begin with. That would be a council item, really.
Okay.
So I took it from mine, and I then checked with Kate to see, when are we gonna start doing any advertisement for this comp plan that's in the work, in the process, this update and all this, and the ordinances that have to go along, because once you've got that comp plan, you've got to make that coincide with all your ordinances, and that's what those monies were appropriated for. Do not confuse it, under council, you have advertising and ordinances, that's different, that's when we have a public hearing, and that's when we advertise for employment or advertise for meetings, that's a different account. This was a special set-aside account, and also planning had some. Kate tells me that she thinks a lot of this advertising will be done by June, which would utilize the money in the budget this year for it, because I can't carry it forward anyway. And as the council reviews their workshops, because they're still really in the midst, they're just beginning. They did one last Saturday, I think. They've got another one scheduled for maybe next Saturday, I think it is. So I think the 31st maybe, or something, or the 30th. As they keep doing their workshops, they'll determine whether they want to put that back in or not. But it's really not a clear,
But it's not in your budget.
it's really not a clear item anyway. It was somehow put in there holding it. I'm sure you remember that, Madeline, on there last year, the discussion back and forth. You are going to have to advertise for that comp plan, whatever
Right.
amendments need to
That
be
seemed
made.
to go into planning, like you say, that doesn't make any sense where it is.
Well, they didn't want it in planning, as I understand. They wanted it kind of held so they could follow it. Somehow it got under the clerk. But I think that's for the council or the budget to determine.
You must have figured you had a little bit of extra time.
No, I don't know why they put it there. I really don't. Now, so
Somebody saw you
that,
sitting there not doing anything one day and says, oh, she's got an extra 10 minutes a day.
so that really ends the expense end, and I will make sure that Matt, when he gets in it, and I will have updated it on the spreadsheet to date. If you want, I'll run you off one of those for the next week, which is a more current one. And if you follow from the front instead of each individual, you might, and I will make sure Matt is aware of it, but quite frankly, he didn't have all my budget. When he's preparing his, I'm doing my own. So the only other thing that I gave you is, you see this little spreadsheet here on conveyance tax?
Oh, you got that.
If you look like this, it has yellow on it. Here you go. Oops. If you follow your revenue account sheets here, and if somebody wants them, I'll run them off each month for you. Because Denise runs them anyway, they're even on clerk base. But if you follow that and you look at where we are on what we've collected, and this is just a quick summary I put together, because look at the very first one, conveyance transfer tax, that's the stamp tax. When somebody sells a house, and that's the conveyance, to convey it from one to the other, the stamp tax they call it, okay, that's what that is. So if you look at the first year, 12-13, you can see we collected $262,586. But you see what the state share of that was? And you see what the town share is? And we don't even, all that town share does not end up all in our general fund, because also we have portion of that goes to open space. Now, I'm going to tell you that, when you purchased a house before, when you sold the house, purchased that, it used to be, the conveyance tax was $4 on every $1,000 of the sale price. Out of my bed, sale price, okay? So, in July, this past July 2014, the state changed and said, instead of $4 a thousand, you're going to charge them $4.60 a thousand. So you're going to see that our total revenue collected as the years go on is going to increase, because they went up 60 cents a thousand. And then said that full 60 cents goes to the state. So the town does not receive $1 of it. But here's what they did for the town. They said, okay, prior to this, on the conveyance, we were getting 55% and the state was getting 45%. So we got, say you sold a house for, on every $1,000 value, we got $2.20 and the state only got $1.80. So they upped it to $4.60, which means I'm collecting more money.
Right.
And what they did was change the town's percentage from 55% down to 47.83%. Because they increase the amount per thousand, it keeps us at that $2.20 a thousand. So we are not losing, but they are now getting.
They're gaining, but you're not losing.
Yeah, they're now getting the 53%, we're down to the 47, but we still equal out to the $2.20. But they're now equaling out to $2.40 when they were getting $1.80. So it's more dollars, but it's not more revenue coming in, okay? I just wanted you to realize that, because as you see these numbers, and you see them in the revenue thing, it's misleading sometimes, because we are getting less of a share now.
But how come in 2013-14,
Yeah.
the town share was 165,778, and the state was 132?
Because only in July, these are fiscal years, July of 2014, the state upped it on their end. But we won't see less, but we'll have collected more, is what I'm saying. So don't be fooled by the idea that we're going to collect more, because we're getting 60 cents a thousand more. And when you deal with these numbers, that's substantial. But our portion of it is not going to go up. We're still going to see about the same. And then that's for the conveyance tax that is paid. So these are the big areas of income for the clerk's office. The next item is, and it's just, this is just FYI really, so that you have recording fees. So you can see that in 12-13, that is for anything you record. You come in and record a deed, it costs you $84, and then $1 every page thereafter. You come in and record a release of a mortgage, it costs you $49 and $1 each page. So That's the money generated from the recording fees. And on the recording fees, for every single recording, they don't, I mean, it's $84 to record, let's say, a mortgage, and then $1 for each page. Well, remember, these aren't the mortgages of yesterday that were only 2 or 3 pages. These are like 25-page mortgages. So it's generating money. And on each and every recording that we do, we give the state $3. Doesn't matter how much we bring in on it. So that's, we're generating more money on recordings than we are on the stamp tax. And then $1 of every recording stays, it has to stay by law. We put it in an account for archival of records, for historic records. It preserves your records that are in the vault. We'll keep, redoing books, rebinding books, old maps. It goes into that, it's a grant. So we actually generate way more money on recording that stays with us than stamp tax.
So do you think just by 1 month, just, it's not a good month, but I mean, is it gonna be anywhere near last year's 6-month total, or?
I think we're on target. If you look at recording, the July 1st to December 31st of 14, we've got 82,415. This last one is just up to date in January. You can see we added about another 8,000. So if double that up to 6 months, and you get about 164,000. So it might not double, it might be a little less or a little more, but it looks like we're right on target.
What's the ACS internet income?
That is, our ACS is our land evidence. That's, maybe for a term, it's our land evidence recording system. It's what it's what the clerk's office runs on. That is, when you're on the internet, attorneys and whatnot can go in and log in. Anybody actually can. But if they want to print, they have to have this code that they can print, and they pay for it, just like if they were in here and they wanted a copy of a recorded document, it's $1.50 a page. And they have to pay, and it all goes through the ACS system, and I don't know what they take from it. And then we get this, so this is clear revenue to us. Now, I told you those grants that are restricted to records, for preserving records, some of it we used to keep going back and putting more and more of the information, more and more of the land evidence, indexing it and scanning it onto the system. Because the further back you go with records, we're up to 1969 now, but if the further back you go, the better it is, because when title workers do work on your house, you're selling a house, they want to go back all the way, and we don't have quite enough information on there. We don't have enough years in there. It's expensive to put it on. It's about $20,000 gets us about 5 years of scanned and indexed onto the system. So we can only do it gradually. Some communities beyond the grant also budget for that. But I don't know that it would increase that revenue enough to say we need to budget beyond. We keep inching at it, and so that's how that goes. So I just wanted to have kind of a picture of that, because each month when we get this revenue report, and I follow mine, and it looks like we're on target. Some might be a little over, some might be a little under. Pretty much, it looks like we're running where we should be. Looks like I might be a little over in copies. A copy, if you come in and look for a copy of your deed, you want a copy of deed, any recorded document, the state sets these fees, we can only go by what they are. A recorded document is $1.50 a page. So if I came in and wanted a copy of my deed and it's 3 pages, I'm going to pay $4.50.
What's the auctioneer's returns?
That's just a little check that keeps coming in, because they must have things where auctioneers, if somebody's holding an auction in town, that auctioneer has to pay a fee to the town.
Okay.
And that's what that is. So, but anything you want, I can get you, if you're looking for certain, more depth on any of these, I'll be glad to get the information for it. There's actually charts of what we charge for recording things and everything. I can get runoffs for you or whatever. And we turn all our revenues in to all our turnovers go to the treasurer twice a month, so that her records are always kept
Now,
up.
let me ask you, the opera reports that the normal person would have to pay for, is that from the state too, that fee, or no?
Yeah, that's the, yeah.
So it's
Now,
not-
in most cases, on these Apple reports, we do not, I mean, we charge if we have to, but if it's something readily available, we won't. Or if it's something we send electronically, we don't. But we don't have everything in electronic form. We do not go and create a form for you. If it has to be hard copy, and that's the only way we can do it, then we'll charge 15 cents a copy. If it's somebody coming in for a page, we may not charge them. Most of our copies, we generate a higher cost because it's recorded documents that we really are. But on my Apple requests, I mean, if it's something I've got to really research, then we follow the law and what the charge should be. But if it's not something,
I just wonder where the charge came from, was it state or not?
it's all state. Most of what we do in our office is regulated by the state. The marriage license, the birth records, all the vitals, it's all set by state. We can't set our own. The dog license is set by the state. These are all general laws that stipulate, even on your licenses, like your building license, it'll tell you can charge up to $25 or something. It'll stipulate. We're really, in that office, really regulated by what the state allows us to do. And that's all I have, other than to ask, last year,
Town sergeant.
or prior years, town sergeant, that one left the same. We never increased it. Actually, that always comes up when the council reviews their budget, and they always say he's not gonna make more than them. And that's it. And that's it. But I have
Where
to
did people go voting on it, was there anybody on the?
Yes.
Yes, Randy Costa. He was in years ago, too. I don't know if you remember. He was in a couple of years ago. He's actually excellent for a town sergeant. I'll tell you why. The town sergeant should be doing a lot of the running for the board canvas. Back and forth, posting the warnings and all this. And we handle a lot of that in-house. But he happens to work in, I don't know if it's Coventry or Johnston. He works out that way, so he's always called us and said, you need stuff to go up to the Board of Election, I'll drop it off on my way to work. So he saves, I mean, there's no one else that is a town sergeant that isn't costing them endless money on gas.
It was a write-in.
He was a write-in. But he was the town sergeant before, and I was glad he agreed to take it again, because he does work on the way to the Board of Election. And you know, when these elections come, you don't pay me a penny for gas. You never did, and you don't. And I run back and forth up there. But if one of these girls, workers have to go, these clerks have to go, you are paying their mileage back and forth up there. And we are at the Board of Election, it could be 3 times in a week, or it could be once in a week. Once they start all the training and all, we have to go back and forth. But just bringing back all these, these ballot applications we've got to get up there, between the Board of Elections and the Secretary of State, we are there weekly, if not multiple times in a week. Now, I will generally take a run a week, but that's all I have time to be taken back up there to be delivering this stuff. I send the police chief lots of times so that we're not paying. The town sergeant is supposed to take some, and the last town sergeant did take some. But I mean, it's unfair to say you're gonna do a town sergeant job, plus you're gonna pay all the expenses to it. And our Board of Canvas members take some, but you cannot imagine the trips back and forth. Daily, when it comes to, they're bringing in the mail ballots, they gotta get up there, they gotta get, and you only have a few days to get it up there, so that is a lot when it hits election time. It's a lot.
Thank you, Lisa.
So it's nice of you to go last.
Well, usually I get a much harder time. People always seem to want to challenge me, and
What did I want to check?
Well, listen, Alex, who says you're not getting a raise, listen.
You're the one that's before I was born, maybe.
Yeah.
Talk about collective memory. That was great, Nancy.
Now,
Thank
the
you very
problem
much.
is, you used to preliminary vote, so when will you think you'd be doing, you used to kind of preliminary vote as they were
We didn't do
just
that. We
preliminary.
didn't do that last year.
No, the budget?
No. You just went
Yes.
through it and in the end,
No provisional?
No, because I asked that question of
I
Laura.
thought we did last year. Marilyn, you don't think you did?
This year, but not last year.
Oh.
yeah, kind of redundant.
Well, because then at the end of the year, I mean, at the end of the budget sessions, you have to remember what each item was. It's harder to do the whole thing at once than it is by department
So you take notes.
on a preliminary.
So you take notes.
I thought it was last year you did it.
No.
That's all I got, kids.
Thank you, Nan.
Ain't just no more. That's it.
Appreciate your time. and
Well, I
effort.
have an opportunity to put a final budget in too, when the final budgets come around, so if anything changes between now and then.
Did you want to do the minutes?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get, I think that's it for the first part of the agenda. The rest-
Thank you.
The rest of it should go pretty quickly.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nan. As always. It's always nice to have Nancy around anyway.
That feast on the special.
Yes, around each other.
I mean, there's got to be some people who have the history and the background and the knowledge of what goes on, because these positions change.
Nancy's know-it-all.
Nancy, we always do.
I know, you forgot more than we know, right? Well, we act like we do.
Well, that's not unusual for me, but... Okay, I didn't list any old business because there really wasn't that I could think of anyway, so if there's any old business that somebody wants to discuss next week, let me know, you all have my email address. I need to get these to Nancy, try to get them to her on Monday afternoon, so that's my goal, so, you know, my email works all weekend, and so does my phone, so. New business, the next week's agenda, which is code enforcement, planning department, planning board, zoning official, debt service, and treasurer. And then on the 12th, upcoming budget, we have the town administration budget. And I don't know if anybody wanted to took a look at them and has any questions, but that's more for information purposes, so we kind of keep track of where we are.
So can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
The February 12th town administration, so will this be sort of his more updated budget? Like
It's
you
just
sort
an
of...
overview that we came, it was just an overview.
Okay, so this will be
Yeah.
now the real budget, okay.
Now, John, do you
Yes, ma'am.
want me to add my numbers to it and give you a clean copy?
Well, I think we should have as clean a copy as we can get. I mean, I don't want to be looking at a 1% with numbers that aren't real. So,
Well, I think Matt's like I say, he had that workshop,
Yeah.
he's having, they're actually special meetings, so council could vote on increasing or decreasing any item. I think he's waiting to get through, he's not used to the process of the
Yeah.
council, meeting and reviewing and adding and taking
since
away.
yours is separate from that process, yeah, update it.
It is, so I'll update it and
That would be helpful.
send it out.
Yeah. Anything else to do with
One
it?
thing I just was sort of interested in, and Laura's not here, but I think Laura and you, John, were going to sort of come up with some ideas of what you were thinking, this is old business, I guess.
Potential
changes to how...
And I'm going to try to work on that this week and get some ideas from some of the other towns as to what they're doing.
Now, the other thing was, if you could come up with a list for us of everybody's email address and phone numbers, because
I thought
I thought I did that. I didn't send it out to everybody?
We did get
Yes,
that, you got the email.
you sent me.
But some of them bounce back.
Well, the only one that bounced back that I had was Alex.
He doesn't have one.
And he does, well,
No, but this was a sheet that we had, that we could, you
Yeah.
know, see everybody.
John did send an email out to all of us saying, please email back if you get this, so I know I have your.
Yeah.
Print out my budget committee.
well, I've got all the email addresses, because everyone went through.
I didn't say what their address.
And the reason I had to make up one for Alex so that the listserv would work, so I just made up, and it came back. So I was gonna hope to get, but he doesn't have an email.
When you have it on the top, you have everybody's name, but you just have their name. I can't email them because I don't have a proper email address. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, Madeline, what did you want to do before you leave?
She'll get them.
I got one.
I've got it, I can easily put it together. Yeah, because when I do the listserv, it just shows the name.
Nancy already has it.
Yeah.
Email address is behind that. Yeah, that's fine. I thought everybody had it, but I'll get it out. Nancy, I got it.
Okay, but remember, you're not supposed, you can say, oh, I'm not gonna make the meeting, or this, that, and the other, but don't be.
Well, no, that's what I.
Don't what?
That's what I
Rolling forum, don't be saying,
No, we're not.
emailing John, hey, we need.
No, what it was when anybody would email, then they put to everybody, I'm not gonna make the meeting tonight, we know who was going here. We had no idea
That's a good idea.
who was coming here tonight.
That's a really good
That's-
idea.
Because you just made your quorum tonight.
Yes, I know. Well, the only one I knew who wasn't gonna be here was Lauren. She called me
Yeah.
about 6 o'clock, and
Today
then,
on the ice, and
and
just
Louise
tonight, she
said,
was actually in here looking up stuff for the budget committee tonight.
Any-
She went home and she slipped on the ice.
anybody heard from Cecil or Alex as to how they're doing? I mean,
I haven't heard from Alex,
She said
no, I
she's
didn't-
all right,
I'll
but
get down there this week.
Wait, she's so sick,
Okay.
what was she looking
I
up?
don't know.
He had the flu.
She was coming to get the agenda.
I don't know. Hasn't been here. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd.
Oh, yeah, Cecil.
Second one.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
He has it.
That passes 6 to nothing. I had to do a quick count. Motion made. All in favor, all opposed, so voted.